Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. This is City Talk. The headlines say it all. Party tensions pervade City Hall. For the mayor, the party line may be tough to get past. And finally, lone voyage for the mayor. Dave Saltonstall of the Daily News writes in his lead, Mayor Bloomberg is trying to line up endorsements from his fellow Republicans and the city council and getting nowhere. To enlighten us why the mayor is getting nowhere in his recent wooing of city council Republicans is city council minority leader James Oddo from the 50th council district, representing parts of Brooklyn and Staten Island, and Dennis Gallagher from the 30th council district, representing parts of my old stomping grounds, Glendale, Middle Village, and Ridgewood in Queens. Councilmember Andrew Lanza, Republican from Staten Island, was also to be here, was dying to be here, but had to attend a special city council session. Okay, gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
What's wrong with Republican Mayor Mike Bloomberg? You're all over the paper. You and the mayor, not good vibes.
I don't think there's anything wrong with Mike Bloomberg. I think he's a nice guy. I think he's, for the most part, an honest man and a genuine man. But the problem is you can't be all things to all people. The mayor admittedly switched parties because he thought it was an easier race. There was a political perfect storm, and he was elected. He borrowed the base from Rudy Giuliani. And from that point on, although cutting checks to some folks on the state level and national level, he's run away from the Republican Party on a local level. We should be natural allies with Mike Bloomberg. We envision, Dennis and Andrew and I envision the type of relationship that Tom Ogdenbenny had with Rudy Giuliani. Tom, the former minority leader, was the point person on the floor of the council, point person on television shows, and perhaps most importantly, he was the point person back in the district. That's what we envisioned. For some reason, that absolutely escapes me and confounds me. This administration has not embraced us, has not wanted that relationship, and hasn't really engendered any loyalty. So when I agree with the mayor, I say I agree with the mayor. When we disagree with the mayor, I don't think there's a hesitation on our part to do that.
Is it because you're Republican?
Well, I think
and proud of it, whatever that is?
Yeah, we certainly are proud Republicans, and I think part of the problem is that the mayor has created an administration that virtually has no Republicans. I can go into the bullpen, throw a rock, and if Kevin Fullington is in the men's room, I won't come within 1,000 feet of hitting a Republican. Yeah, that's part of the problem. I also think part of the problem is that there's certain arrogance or hubris on the part of the administration, and I think they thought that we don't have to embrace these guys because when the time is right, we'll do what a lot of people are doing. We'll do to them what a lot of people are doing. That they'll fall into line because we'll throw the goodies around.
Ooh. This is a run-on indictment. I mean, you're really not happy about this.
No, because you have to understand something, Doug. You know, Dennis and Andrew and I, in the heat of that summer, went out and put our good names on the line.
Summer of 2001.
Right, campaigning. And I didn't know Michael Bloomberg from a hole in the wall. I met him. He seemed like a genuine guy. We put our good names on the line, went out to our districts, which were key to his reelection, and said, vote for this guy because this guy is going to embrace the Republican ideals and continue the tradition of Rudy Giuliani. And he's run away from that to a certain degree.
I want to talk about policy and politics in a minute, but I want to turn to Dennis. And in doing the research for this interview, I came across a piece that you had done for Gotham Gazette, and I quote, I guess, the 5th paragraph. All 4 of us have something that a lot of our Democratic colleagues do not have, access to Mayor Bloomberg. I mean, are you buying his story, or is this reality in 2001 different than it turned out, as Jim suggests?
Well, let's say there's been some good times with the mayor's office, and obviously there's been some hard times. You know, certainly good times early on when we thought that we were going to have a great relationship, and certainly bad times when Jimmy, Andy, and myself voted against the historic 18.5% property tax increase, and rightfully so, on behalf of the constituents that we represent. So we had hoped that we'd have a better relationship with the mayor, and I think what Jimmy pointed out is absolutely true. when we go into the bullpen or we go to commissioners or staff people throughout the administration and we look for somebody who shares our ideology, who wants to assist us, we run into people who are entrenched Democrats, who have been working under Democratic administrations from years to years, and the people who we knew who were from Rudy Giuliani's time are long since gone.
Oh, go ahead.
And I think that when we want to try to access government, we want to try to be able to deliver for our constituencies, we have probably a difficult time with some of the folks there.
Okay, well, so what you just said, what both of you just said, raises the question, what does it mean to be a Republican in New York City? You throw this rock and you hit this one individual.
Well,
what does it mean to be a Republican? What is what is the litmus test? And how does Michael Bloomberg fail that litmus test? What does it mean to be a Republican in New York City in 2005?
You know, certainly we know what it's like to swim upstream in New York City, being conservative-minded Republicans in a very liberal-dominated city of New York. But we take that responsibility seriously. When we're in the city council and we're debating bills, and we ensure that there's dialogue and debate in the halls of government. And without the Republican representation in the city council, there would be no such debate, no such dialogue. And I think that we've proven ourselves to be very effective leaders in that time, especially during the tax increase debate, where the council minority was the only one that wanted to tackle the real issues and look at significant alternatives to tax increases. And the blind tax and spend city council had just said that we're not even going to look at alternatives. The 18.5% is acceptable.
Okay, so you're saying your differences from the mayor, with the mayor, revolve on two things. One is ideology, what it means to be a conservative and what it means to be a Republican. We have to talk about that. But you're also talking about the realm of practical politics and issues. It seems that it's this call for, well, the mayor first calls for a 25% increase, and you guys vote on, or the body votes on an 18.5%. Is that the straw that broke the camel's back, or is that the one shot that broke the camel's back? I mean, is this a turning point?
Listen, I believe there are certain fundamental beliefs why some people become Democrats, and I respect those reasons why they become Democrats. There's certain fundamental beliefs and certain reasons why people become Republicans. The tax issue has always been a defining line.
Okay.
And the administration failed to realize that we weren't with them on that, not because of some lack of courage or political expediency, but we fundamentally believe that increasing taxes was wrong, particularly when it hits our district. You know, there was a revenue side and then there was a spending side, and we haven't seen a way of controlling the spending side. And what we said to the mayor back then was, Mayor, we see four things that are causing this gap. It's not because police overtime or firehouses that's causing the gap. It's the same thing 3 years ago that we talked about recently. It's Medicaid, it's pension costs, it's health coverage, and it's debt service. And we said to the mayor at that time, put a package together. Show us how you're working to control these things, and then come see us about increasing revenue. And there was no plan at that point. And frankly, I don't see a plan for the long-term structural balance in the city. You can't just kind of shrug your shoulders and say, well, you know, now $20 billion is a non-discretionary. We have no control over it. Tell Rudy Giuliani that he had no control over it, and see if Rudy Giuliani would have gone like this. I don't think so. And yeah, so there's the fundamental, that was a turning point in the relationship, both from a policy perspective and a political perspective. The political perspective was the mayor told us, Dennis and I, in a meeting the day before we voted, put your balls on the table and make a decision. And the mayor walked out of a meeting. We were kind of taken back by it because for 20 minutes we told him we had made a decision, and we decided that we were standing by our constituents, and we believed that just raising revenue wasn't the answer. You're going to raise revenue, not address the spending side, kind of mask the problem, wait till Wall Street gins up again, and 10 years from now we'll have the same structural imbalance.
Okay, now one of the critiques of the mayor's budget by you and other independent analysts is that the mayor recognizes that there are these structural imbalances, but in fact has not addressed them. And you're arguing, both of you, a very deep, not only ideological, but philosophical and governance and management approach to this entire thing. You're saying that the mayor has no vision.
I don't see a long-term plan.
Yeah, and I agree with Jimmy. You know, we've had opportunities to sit down and discuss with the administration our belief on what we should do in terms of trying to resolve some of the difficulties in our government process. We've gone up to Albany. We've met with numerous people to talk about Medicaid. We've sat down with the Manhattan Institute, with IBO, with many different people to try to come up with long-term solutions so that my children don't have to pay and my children's children don't have to pay the debt service in this city. And I think that anytime we go back with what we believe are legitimate responses and things that we should really be handling, that the response from the administration is sort of push it off to the side and move forward in the direction they were moving.
So it's essentially an incremental status quo budget and process, and you guys are looking for more fundamental and structural reform.
Realistically, the city of New York has about as much long-term structural balance as a trapeze artist with vertigo. Okay, look at it. You have these four things that have been the genesis of the gaps in recent years. They're the genesis of the gaps in the out years. What have we done? We haven't addressed anything on the Medicaid issue. The mayor essentially has said that talking to the unions about health costs is a non-starter. This is the guy who wraps himself in being independent. He owes no allegiance to political parties or unions.
Why, from a policy point of view?
Well, I happen to think it's more political than not. I mean, he's making a big push to go in the African-American community and the Latino community, and I think there's a sense, why do we need to kind of stir the hornet's nest on addressing this issue this year and in years past? So, you know, I would love to see the mayor do what he did on control of the Board of Education, even though it was outside of our purview, to use the office as a bully pulpit. And for the mayor to recognize that the Medicaid issue isn't just framed in terms of HHC or hospitals. The long-term care being used by, frankly, our constituents, the middle class, is what's driving the Medicaid problem. You can't frame this issue specifically to HHC hospitals and say our hospitals are addicted to Medicaid dollars like everyone else is.
Okay, talk more about issues. Let's get to, you know, what are the other major policy differences that you have before we get into politics?
Well, I mean, we're happy that with the decision to hire Ray Kelly. We think Ray Kelly's done a great job in continuing the fight against crime. What we're concerned about on a policy issue is that the policing problems that we have in our district aren't reflected in CompStat. And you can't go into Middle Village and say, well, Middle Village has a crime drop of 20% in the last 8 months, because Dennis will tell you his problem is vandalism and graffiti. Come to Staten Island, the problem is, and we know from our previous administration that those quality of life crimes are the red flag, which are a precursor to the more serious problems
the broken windows. I mean, we've all lived through.
So we think the Ray Kelly's done a great job, the police have done a great job, but we think there's problems there.
No, I agree with Jimmy, and I think that this is something that the administration has failed to see. This is not only a problem in Staten Island with policing strength, but it's a problem all throughout Queens County, Staten Island, throughout Brooklyn. It just seems that there's enough police officers to go around in the borough of Manhattan, but when you go out to the outer boroughs, that it's not there. It's not uncommon, by the way, for sometimes at night for us to have only 1 or 2 patrol cars for an entire police precinct.
Wait a minute, this sounds like the mayor's Democratic rivals talking now, that this is a Manhattan-centric administration. You're saying the same thing.
Well, I'm saying that there is a policing strategy that has to be more sensitive to the outer boroughs. This is not something that I'm saying only here publicly. I've said it personally to the administration and their representatives. And I think for some reason they look at CompStat numbers and they see reductions, but they don't see the everyday quality of life impact. They don't see the noise complaints. They don't see the graffiti vandalism. They don't see the crowds of unruly youth sitting on a street corner till 3 o'clock in the morning where the neighbors can't get sleep, and it takes 45 minutes to an hour to get a police car there.
Just to be fair, let's be fair. We acknowledge, and we give credit to Mayor Bloomberg and to Ray Kelly. We acknowledge it's better that we're talking about graffiti and vandalism.
I was just going to point that. Excuse me. Who would have predicted in 2002, when Mike Bloomberg became mayor, that you would still have the bottom
and our job, and sometimes we get too kind of focused in on it. Our job is to address problems, and sometimes it's easy to forget to say thank you. And we have always, despite the bad times, we have always acknowledged the good things that this administration has done in our own districts and across the city. So now people want to talk to us more about the bad things and about the trouble, but we've always acknowledged and said that the mayor has done good things on, we support mayoral control. There are plenty of things that we can say that the administration has done.
And I think that's important to point out, that there are a lot of things that we agree with this administration on. Certainly mayoral control, we're hoping, God willing, that the direction of the school system changes. We've seen too many kids fail, and our system failed too many children. And with the policing, sure, the numbers have gone down. But there are also other issues, and I want to be thankful here and say it publicly. Police commissioner set up an impact zone within the 104th precinct within my councilmanic district that has had a tremendous effect of reducing crime within the 104th precinct, and we're appreciative of that. But I think the administration also has to focus on getting more police into it, because if you think you're driving down numbers now, give enough resources to our police precinct and you'll drive the numbers down further, which will make everybody happy.
Okay, so now we've got a much more nuanced view of your perception of the mayor. Given column A and column B here, does Mike Bloomberg deserve to be reelected as the mayor of the city of New York? And then I want to segue into a more political discussion, if I might.
I think the mayor's done a pretty good job. He's done a pretty good job by my district. I think he's done a pretty good job by the city. My fundamental problem with the mayor is he came into my party, he came into our party, he came into our communities, and frankly, he used both. He got to where he is because of the Republican Party, and he got to where he is because of places like Staten Island and Middle Village, Queens. And because of that, that underscores our desire to be treated fairly and maybe just a little bit better than fairly. And when I mean our districts. And let me just say one thing, Doug. The administration likes to scoff. Eddie Schuyler and Bill Cunningham, the wordsmiths, like to say that this is about patronage or jobs or contracts. Nothing about that. Never went to them for jobs. This is about treating our communities that are very important to his reelection, treating them fairly, and making sure they're not an oversight. Understanding that they have their quote-unquote base that they borrowed, but they need to look beyond that base. Well, don't take us for granted. And I get a sense they've taken us individually for granted. We don't want them to take our communities for granted.
Maybe they don't need your base. Maybe they've already taken much of Mark Green's base. And politically, okay, let's just look at this politically. So you've said all this. Does a Dennis Gallagher or a Jim Oddo at some point endorse someone other than the mayor, either in a primary election or in a general election? Let's talk primary here. You guys know what's going on with Tom Agnebenny. Tom has declared to challenge the mayor in the primary, and in a sense got instant credibility, great press, and it feeds on your guys' dissatisfaction. Now, he was your predecessor as minority leader in the council and your predecessor as council member representing that district. And in fact, Tom still works part-time for you as council. In a Republican primary between Tom Agnebenny and Mike Bloomberg, what does Jimmy Oddo do?
Well,
he keeps quiet, goes to Florida?
No, Jimmy Oddo couldn't be.
No, he does not quiet. No.
Dennis and I have a very close relationship with Tom. There's a personal affinity. I mean, he is, for all intents and purposes, like a second father to each of us. So, and we believe that his message resonates. I think Tom's candidacy is a reflection of the dissatisfaction in the rank and file. With that said, I'm not, and I don't know if Dennis is, looking to rush out there and endorse Tom at this point. We'll let the process play itself out. But I think it's important, and I think.
But could you see yourself doing it?
Listen, there are no options that I've taken off the table.
And you too, Dennis?
And it's about delivering for the district. Right? We have to figure out at the right time, certainly not tomorrow, who is the best person to help deliver for Staten Island and Queens. We'll look at the record. And frankly, the mayor's record is incomplete. That's why, and you alluded to some of the stories, that's why we've said to folks in the administration, don't give us any promises. We don't want a wish list. Just do what's right by my district. Come see us in 6 months. I'm not going out and endorsing Mike Bloomberg tomorrow. Come see us in 6 or 7 months, and I'll make a decision on his job in its totality.
But then I also hear that at least the possibility of, slim though it may be, of an endorsement of a Freddie Ferrer, a Gifford Miller. I mean, it is not inconceivable that the message of a Ferrer candidacy, for example, that would resonate very well with what you said earlier about the Manhattan-centric nature, what you talked about earlier, Dennis, in terms of your neighborhoods. There's some funny things going on. Something's happening.
It's interesting.
I don't know what it is. It ain't exactly
This is going to be an interesting political season. And certainly what we've seen as Republicans for a long time is when you have a primary election, the Democrats tend to state their position so far to the left, it's very difficult for them to come back to center for a general election. Now we see a mayor who, I think, make no mistake about it, he's registered as a Republican, but his agenda philosophically is more to the left than it is towards middle or right. And with an opponent from the right in the a conservative Republican, that may force the mayor to come a little bit closer to center and help him in his race.
Wait a minute, but Dennis, I mean, this is a blue city. You've got a 5-to-1 Democratic advantage. Doesn't it work for the mayor
this
to
is
have
a blue
you guys
city.
mad at him?
This is a blue city that has
spin.
elected Rudolph Giuliani again, and Michael Bloomberg, who ran as a Republican, as the person who's going to continue the traditions of Rudy Giuliani. It's a swing city where people don't want their candidates all the way out to either extreme, but they want somebody who's closer to center.
Wait a minute. I think the 2001 election was the third Giuliani election. This may be the first Bloomberg election, and that may have a different dynamic.
I think that
that's good.
Each of the Democratic candidates makes a mistake if he writes off places like Staten Island and Dennis's district. I think there are votes out there, and particularly if Freddie Ferrer runs the campaign of Freddie Ferrer as the borough president all those years, and not the Freddie Ferrer of the last campaign of A Tale of Two
Cities.
Cities.
Well, you're talking about the moderate. I mean, that's essentially who he is.
Right.
He's a moderate to liberal. He is not all the way out there. He's not a racial divide. He's a moderate.
I think one of the mistakes that the Bloomberg campaign was making, although I think they've had an epiphany over the last several weeks, is that there's this arrogance of where would Staten Island or where would Dennis's district turn to. Like they would never vote for a Ferrer or a Miller or a Weiner. I think they think that people in my district reflexively vote Republican. That's not true. And if Freddie or Gifford or Anthony Weiner give them a message, a moderate message, I think those votes are in play. And they don't have to actually win Staten Island. They actually have to just kind of mitigate the victory.
The advantage they're going to get in Queens that they hope to get, and,
right.
In Dennis's borough, because that's where they got.
They're traditional swing voters.
Right.
In my district, I was surprised to see the vote in some areas that John Kerry received, but yet when they came back, they overwhelmingly shot back to vote for Surf Maltese, and they re-elected Tony Seminario, both conservative individuals. So the challenge in a community like mine is to go out and show them they want moderate representation. They don't want somebody who's on either of the political extremes.
Okay. Let's just talk strategy here. Tom Ognebeni is running. Let's assume that he can raise the $250,000 plus that gets matched, that he's in some way a player. Is it at all likely that he could do a 1969 marquee knocking, Italo from Outer Borough knocks off white, Upper East Side liberal Republican?
I'm not saying it's likely or it's probable, but it certainly is conceivable. Think about this for a second. As Dennis mentioned earlier, in primaries, whether it's the Democratic side, the left of the party comes out, and the Republican side is the right. Those votes are going to come out of areas in Queens, Southwest Brooklyn, and Staten Island.
Yep.
Okay? And those are going to be conservative Republicans. Can you see the Tom Ognebeni literature piece? Take a mock off of the mayor's book, Bloomberg on Bloomberg, and open it up and use the mayor's words and says, as he said to the New York Times a few weeks ago, I'm very much pro-choice, I'm pro-gay rights, I'm for gun control, and I'm against the death penalty. How does that message play with hardcore Republican primary voters?
Not well, but the rest of the electorate in this blue city is cheering.
Well, but we're talking about the Republican.
Let's talk about the
Republican primary.
Okay, now
wait.
No, you go.
Now, Ognebeni stays on the conservative line.
We have to assume that he gets the conservative
which is not certainly. It's an assumption. It's elite because the conservative party has to make
I personally think he's got it locked, and there's a deal. But I don't know. I don't have any information.
I don't know that to be true. I don't have any information either. But if he stays on you have some disaffected Republicans, some Giuliani Democrats or Reagan Democrats. And he siphons off X percentage points.
5-6% of the vote. If it's as close as the last couple of mayoral elections, except the '97 election, you could do it. So Tom can't necessarily do a marquee. There's no marquee scenario, but there could be a third-party siphoning. Now, wait a minute. So you guys, all you ideologically conservative Republicans, beat Mike Bloomberg and elect Freddie Ferrer or Giff Miller. Better for your constituents? Better for your party?
Does Dennis have an ideological match in this race?
No.
No. So, I mean, there comes a point in time where
okay,
somebody
if it's not
in the
ideology,
Republican Party is
then
going
what
to
is it
stand on
then?
principle.
It's simply, if it's not ideology and it's not, if it's not ideology, it can be principle or it can be the practical benefits to your constituents. That's what drives it. What deal I can make for my constituents. That's your role as a representative.
Who's going to deliver for our district? That's always been the end game.
Okay. So, if it happens to be not Mayor Bloomberg, it may not be Mayor Bloomberg.
See, I think when
He's
you
not
take
going to buy everybody off.
He's
Alan Capelli, Freddie Ferrer's former campaign manager, publicly said that you guys would be bought ultimately. I was witness to a bet between you and Alan on the floor of the council where you denied that. Now, you have the possibility of making this bet a sure thing for you.
Yeah, I'll tell you this, and I'll say it, and forgive my language, but I'm not a political whore, and I have no price tag on me. And one of the reasons why I've dug my heels in so much is that you can't mistreat people for 3 years and then think come January 2005, you throw the goodies on the table and we're going to fall the way so many other people probably will fall. That's not me. That's not Dennis. That's not the way it's going to happen. Now, ultimately, we may make a decision when we support Mayor Bloomberg, but it's not a foregone conclusion. And the reason why I took that bet with Mr. Capelli is that he made it sound like it was a given. I don't think it's a given, so I'll take.
Are you
I'll play the
subject to
probability.
negotiation, like Dr. Johnson said?
No, I'll watch, and I'll make a decision on the total record. And if the record doesn't go up to snuff, I could sit on the sideline. I could endorse someone else.
And what's your story?
Same sort of liberating,
absolutely.
actually.
You know,
yeah, it is.
It's interesting. I mean, certainly we're going to watch how this plays out, and we'll sit down and we'll listen to Mike Bloomberg and we'll listen to whoever else wants to come and talk to us, and certainly we have the interest of making sure that our community is protected. That's what we're elected for. But ultimately, no one here is for sale. If we were for sale, I'm sure that if we went to Anthony Weiner, Gifford Miller, Fernando Ferrer, that our value would be more to them than it is probably to a Michael Bloomberg.
Thank you.